Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hope you're well, sister. Barakallahu fiki. Question here is, what is the reason, what is the hikmah behind the iddah? And the example that you are giving of iddah is of a woman who has recently become a widow. Is it only for the purpose of ruling out pregnancy, or are there multiple reasons? Now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, فَطَلِّقُوهُنَّ لِعِدَّتِهِنَّ وَأَحْصُوا الْعِدَّةَ. If you divorce one of your wives, then make sure that they go through an iddah period. So what is an iddah? The best way for us to understand what an iddah is understood. Iddah basically means a duration, a fixed term. That's the best way that we can translate it. But if we look at other ayat from the Quran, we will then understand that really an iddah is a waiting period. And the waiting period for the woman in different scenarios would differ according to the scenario and according to her own characteristics. So let's say a woman has been divorced that has a particular iddah. Say a woman herself has gone through a divorce, as in she's asked for the divorce, and this is known as khula, and it has been accepted and it's gone through correctly. That has its own iddah. Say a woman becomes a widow, that has its own iddah. Say a woman is pregnant and she is divorced or widowed, that has its own iddah. Say a woman is married, or say she is married and she is divorced and she has to go through an iddah, but she doesn't have a menses, because Allah tells us, wahsul iddah, count the iddah period. But what if we've got nothing to count? What if she doesn't menstruate? What do we do then? Therefore, it is important for us to understand that the iddah is basically a waiting period, and it differs according to the scenario and it differs according to the woman's circumstances. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, for example, وَالْمُطَلَّقَاتِ يَتَرَبَّصْنَ بِأَنفُسِهِنَّ ثَلَاثَةَ قُرُوءٍ. The woman who has been divorced, then she is to wait for 3 menstrual cycles. So now here we understand that the iddah is for 3 menstrual cycles for talaq only. But what's the iddah for another scenario? Let's say she's gone through a widow, she's become a widow and she's mourning a death. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَيَذَرُونَ أَزْوَاجٍ يَتَرَبَّصْنَ بِأَنفُسِهِنَّ أَرْبَعَةَ أَشْهُرٍ وَعَشْرًا. That she waits, if she's recently become a widow, she waits for 4 months and 10 days. Now this introduction is really important for us to understand the hikmah, because each one of those scenarios and characteristics has its own hikmah, and then we can understand that all of these hikmahs either apply, or one of them apply, or none of them apply for her. So one of the reasons and one of the wisdoms that the ulama have mentioned is that it allows the woman to mourn. It allows her to psychologically get over what's going on in her life. If it's a talaq, then the iddah period is for them to mourn their own separation, so that they can hopefully reevaluate and try and save and salvage the marriage. And if they feel that the marriage is not worth saving, then at least they are making that decision based on careful consideration, rather than, heat of the moment, I don't like him anymore, I want out, divorce him, or he does it to her, or she does it to him, and they separate. And those kind of arguments and those kind of heated debates, etc., can happen. And a person, could make a decision based on that and end up regretting it. So the Sharia says no. Say you've said something, you might actually end up regretting it. So if you do end up regretting it, give yourself some time to think. So the first hikmah, I would say, is a period of rehabilitation, whether it's going through a divorce or whether it's going through, mourning. Some of the ulama have said, definitely, this is definitely our wisdom, which is to make sure that her womb is clear and empty. So if she waits for 4 months and 10 days, it is very obvious now that she is not pregnant. Or if she has been divorced and she waits for 3 menstrual cycles, then now it becomes very obvious that she is not pregnant. And the khula has its own iddah. That's the divorce that's been put forward by the woman, and that's 1 menstrual cycle. And again, one of the hikmahs that we gain from that is that, what I have said, so that the womb has been declared, void, as in there's nothing there. The reason for that now is that, say she got divorced, and a week later she gets married again, but she's pregnant from her previous husband. Without the iddah period, lineages will be mixed up. Therefore, one of the reasons there is that to make sure there is no pregnancy. From this, we can also understand that there's an overlap. So then we've just said, okay, her womb is going to be empty, and one of the iddas is 1 month, another iddah is 3 months, another iddah is 4 months and 10 days. Why can't all of them just be 1 month if the reason is to make sure that the womb is empty? And like we said before, there will be an overlap. So the iddah for the woman who's been divorced is 3 months, is to make sure that the womb is empty, but also give a chance for reconciliation. 4 months and 10 days to make sure that the womb is empty, but also give her a chance of mourning. Uh, I think there are other things that the ulama have mentioned, but I think this is the main, gist of it. So that she can come to realization as to where she is. If she's married already and she's going through a talaq, then they can have an understanding of one another whether this is the thing that they want to do, uh, physically and psychologically, that she gets a chance to prepare for her next move, and she can have a very careful, considered understanding as what her next move is going to be. The womb is empty. And I think these are the only things that I can think of right now. But I mean, different ulama have mentioned different things. However, ultimately, I think Ibn al-Qayyim mentions this, and this is a very important point. Ultimately, we do not know. And this is very important because sometimes people will ask, what's the ruling on such and such? Give them the ruling, then they'll say, okay, but why do we need to do that in the Sharia? The answer is because Allah and His Messenger have made it part of this religion. Why is Fajr 2 rak'at and Dhuhr 4 rak'at? When for some people, Dhuhr having Dhuhr 2 rak'at would be easier because they're in a midday prayer, and praying 4 or praying 12 is quite extensive. If it was shorter, pray 4 rak'at would be easier for them because they've got to manage work or studies or whatever. But at Fajr time, they've got plenty of time, and it's a time of peace and serenity and calmness. And if I was to pray 12 then, it would have been easier for me. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has legislated. And if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said that this is what is good for us, then this is what is good for us. But these are some of the things that the ulama have mentioned out of what they were able to deduce. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it's limited to these. I mean, we can talk about this a lot longer, to be honest, because there's other things that we need to mention about the Iddah period and some of the things that are connected to it, and that gives us a better understanding as well about some of the reasonings. But I would say the main thing is that the Iddah period has been legislated for women so that they can understand where they are, understand where their body is, understand their connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His religion and what they are going to do next. And I hope this has helped. I'm very sorry for the length of the message, but inshallah, hopefully, this has been some way of a clarification of understanding what it is and why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has legislated. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us all tawfiq and success, and that He makes easy for all of the women that are going through their iddah period, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala replaces for them with something which is better. هذا والله أعلم وصلى الله على نبينا محمد والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله.